Have you ever made something and only years later realized what it was actually about? I think every artist has experienced this at once. You create something because it feels right. You don't overthink it, you don't analyze it, you just make it. Then one day, you step back and realize, I've been telling the same story over and over again. That happened to me. For years, I've painted eyes. They appeared in painting after painting, sometimes obvious, sometimes almost hidden. People began asking me what they mean. Were they the third eye? Was it the evil eye? Some kind of mystical symbolism. And every time someone asked, I didn't really know how to answer. Not because there wasn't an answer, but because I hadn't discovered it yet. At that time, I thought I was making decisions. I thought I was choosing a visual language, but now I think something much deeper was happening. The paintings knew me better than I knew myself. They tapped into the subconscious of me when the conscious me didn't realize it. It sounds strange, but I honestly believe that's one of the gifts of making art. Sometimes your hand reveals what your heart hasn't admitted. Sometimes your work becomes a mirror before it becomes the message. Looking back now, I don't think I was painting eyes. I think I was painting longing and yearning. Every human being wants to be seen, not noticed, not looked at, but seen. There's a difference. To be noticed is superficial, and to be seen is to have someone recognize who you actually are. The beautiful parts, the broken, the things you're proud of, the things you wish no one knew, and the things you are ashamed of. Every one of us carries that desire, whether we admit it or not. I don't understand that. I didn't understand that when I started making these paintings, but looking back, I think that's exactly what they were reaching towards. At that point in my life, I thought that longing was directed towards people. I wanted connection, understanding, and recognition. And like many artists, I think I hoped my work would allow someone to look at a painting and somehow understand me without needing words. Art became the language I couldn't speak, and those eyes, they kept appearing, watching, witnessing, and waiting. But there was another part of that longing that I hadn't recognized. A longing that wasn't only directed toward other people, but it was directed toward God. I just didn't know Him yet. And when I converted to Christianity, and eventually entered the Catholic Church, something remarkable happened. My paintings didn't suddenly change overnight. Instead, they began to make sense and began to have their true meaning. And that surprised me. I hadn't expected faith to change my art. What I didn't expect was for faith to explain my work. It felt as though I hadn't been writing a story in a language I didn't yet understand. And suddenly, someone handed me the translation, because it forced me to ask a difficult question. Was I really the author of these symbols, or was I discovering them alongside everyone else? I still don't have a perfect answer, but I no longer believe that every meaningful thing in my paintings originated with my conscious intentions. Sometimes art reveals the artist and what they are searching for. One passage from scripture completely transformed how I understood these recurring eyes. It's found in the Book of Ezekiel. And Ezekiel described heavenly beings unlike anything we normally imagine. Their wings covered in eyes everywhere. When I first read that passage, I stopped because it felt strangely familiar. Not because I thought that's exactly what I've been painting, but because I realized there was an ancient visual language that echoed something my work had been reaching towards all along. Those eyes in the scripture are incredibly important. They're not just there because angels are some sort of spaghetti monster, as Richard Dawkins likes to say. They're not symbols of secret knowledge, mystical ornaments, but they communicate something about God himself. They point towards his perfect awareness, his complete vision, his presence throughout all of creation. Nothing escapes his sight. Nothing exists outside his love. And nothing is forgotten and unseen. The image changed the way I understood my own paintings. The eyes stopped being symbols of observation, and they became symbols of presence. There's something beautiful about realizing that one of our deepest fears is believing that no one truly sees us. And one of Christianity's deepest promises is that we have always been seen. Not because God is searching for reasons to condemn us, but because he knows us completely. That realization changed the meaning of every eye I had ever painted. And now, I know some people will continue to interpret my work differently. Many viewers have associated these eyes with the third eye. Others have connected it to the evil eye. And I understand why. Eyes have existed as symbols in countless cultures throughout history. But symbols don't exist in isolation. Their meaning depends on the stories they belong to. And within my work, these eyes don't resemble hidden bowers. They don't represent occult traditions or point towards esoteric knowledge. They point towards communion, towards presence, towards the human desire to be fully known. As I've continued painting, I become more intentional, not about forcing meaning into my work, but about recognizing the meaning that has already begun revealing itself. There's a quote by Michelangelo where he describes sculpting as freeing the figure already trapped within the marble. Sometimes I think painting is similar. You're not inventing everything. Sometimes you're uncovering something that's been waiting for you to notice. That's how these eyes have felt, not imposed, discovered. I think that's one of the reasons I continued making art. Not simply to produce beautiful images, not to master techniques, but to continue discovering truth. Because every painting teaches me something. Sometimes about color, composition, and sometimes about myself or the universe, and sometimes about God. When you look at one of my paintings now, I don't necessarily want you to see what I see. That's not how art works. Every viewer brings their own experiences, their own questions, wounds, their own hopes, but I do hope that you pause. I hope you notice the eyes. I hope you wonder why they're there, and maybe, just maybe, you'll ask yourself the same question I eventually had to ask. What have I been searching for all along? For me, the answer wasn't simply that I wanted people to see my work. It was that I wanted to be seen completely by others and ultimately by God. The remarkable thing about Christianity is that it didn't create that longing. It explains it. This desire had always been there. The paintings just proved it. I just didn't recognize its destination until much later. So if you're ever wondering why there are eyes throughout my paintings, that's the story. They're not there to make the work mysterious. They're not there to make it unsettling. They're there because they remind me that one of the deepest truths about being human is our longing to be known. And one of the deepest truths of my faith is that before I ever painted a single eye, I was already seen. Thank you guys so much for listening to my explanation of my work. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe, and check out some of my work.